One of my earliest memories of Christmas is actually one year where I wanted a Spider-Man bike. Something that I really wanted. Now, my parents, God bless their soul, they thought that I needed clothes and books instead of this bike. Okay? But I told them, I go, hey, that's okay. But guess what? With this bike, I'll be able to go to the store and I'll be able to go to the library to read these books. See, we can actually, if you give me this bike, I can actually kill 2, 3, maybe 4 birds with one stone, right? That went so-so. Okay, but in order for me to get this bike, I needed to write this letter to Santa, right? So what did I do? I took out my paper, my pen, and I started writing, Santa, I want this bike, I need this bike. I know that you'll understand. You'll understand that I really need this bike. Mom and Dad, but you'll totally know where I'm coming from, Santa, right? So I did, right? I wrote the letter, I gave it to my parents because my parents were the ones that represented the middlemen, right? So I needed to give it to them in order for them to give it to Santa, right? Okay, Christmas comes. I'm excited. I run down and I see a Spider-Man logo, right? I see it in the corner. So I run up to the tree, and it's a book, and it's a bunch of clothes, right? Okay. Now, I share this story out of fun and in a comedic way, but my parents mean well, okay? I'm not trying to, make them look bad or anything. But in this example, my parents represent a concept that was really new to me at the time and that really kind of changed the way I saw things. And I think for a lot of us as well, at this certain age maybe. Conventional trust, right? The idea that things are and things are supposed to be and things run a certain way, right? This idea of this conventional trust that I could not give this letter to Santa myself, I had to go through my parents. This idea of conventional trust was new to me, but it kind of, I saw it in school. I saw it in high school when I got my first bank account, when I had to go get my driver's license. Like I saw it in different aspects of my life, right? Now, something interesting happened to me the other day. We were traveling, right? So we were at the airport and I needed a ride to where I was going to stay, right? So the obvious thing would be for any of us to just, get a taxi, right? All we have to do is raise our hand or jump on a bus that takes us somewhere, right? So I did the most obvious thing, right? I reached for my phone and I picked up an Uber, right? Now, the next most obvious thing would be for me to go to my hotel. So I did the most obvious thing. I took out my phone and I made sure that the driver knew where my Airbnb was that I was going to stay at, right? And as I was shopping around, I saw things that I liked and I wanted them. So again, the most obvious thing, I grabbed my phone and I bought them on Amazon so they can go straight to my house, right? Now, this whole, from the airport to the Amazon thing, let's say it happened in an hour, right? But what's interesting is that in this hour, in these 60 minutes, I was actually able to demonstrate the redistribution of that trust, right? That digital trust, if you will. Now, I know that most of us nowadays, we do our online banking. Some of us even pay, our mortgages. We can do that through the phone, right? Through our phones. And technology, with that conventional trust, just like many different aspects of our lives, they come together. And when they do, great things can happen. But also, some things that are a little bit disturbing can also happen. We have such great applications like Facebook, right? Which was the original message or mission was to essentially be able to connect people, right? Me be able to post a picture here and then have a friend who lives in Asia be able to see that picture. We can communicate. He can send me and I can send to him, right? That was the original message of Facebook, to connect people. But again, when we have technology and conventional trust, when they come together, sometimes we can other things can happen. For example, we had Facebook who was actually compromising some of our data for their own means, for ads, but also for maybe some news segments that we were watching, right? Or the news that was coming to us. Now, you could say, in a way, that, Facebook being one example, that conventional trust was maybe not meant for the digital age. Maybe there's a disconnect somewhere, right? And really, in this civil war of our data that we're currently having, you can also say that when, examples like blockchain came around, we were actually, was able to be, successful and really resonate with people, right? When we have this conventional trust and this, misuse of our data, right? Now, okay, then that brings us to blockchain, right? The interesting thing about blockchain is that it is a very complex thing to explain to people, right? And I'm not here to necessarily explain to you how it works. I know a lot of us have heard of Bitcoin, a lot of us have heard of, NFTs. But what I want to talk to you about today is not so much the technology, but what it's doing, right? For example, we often think that blockchain is a new technology, right? It's accomplishing something new. It's doing something new. But in reality, it's actually not creating something new, but it's fixing a really old problem that we have, right? Now, we talked a little bit about, Facebook and some of the innovations that we've had. But there's also another innovation that we have that's also been compromised by that conventional trust and by the technology emerging. And that's us. That's our identities, our data, what that means to us. I mean, as we saw, for example, in some of the most recent elections, our data and our identities were often compromised, or they were often not. It was maybe we didn't have enough tallies, or there weren't enough people that were registered to vote, let's just say, and our data or our digital identity per se became very, very valuable during times like the election. So we have this essentially, the blockchain technology that, kind of like I spoke about, and we've also heard, it's actually a way that we can, have peer-to-peer transactions and do it in a way that we can actually go ahead and eliminate that middleman. My call to action to you today is to not look at blockchain and to not look at, Bitcoin and NFTs as a craze, or as, don't try to understand something that may be complex for us to understand, but to understand one thing, that blockchain is actually fighting polarization that some previous misuse of data has created by community, by building that community. It's interesting how, Web3 and blockchain has been able to attract people from social media, people like Nike, people like Adidas, people like in fashion, that have absolutely zero knowledge or zero experience with programming per se, but it has attracted them. And instead of we have the polarization that we have, where we have someone on one end and someone on the other end saying, this is the way it should be and they're wrong, and vice versa. Instead, what blockchain is doing is it's actually building a community where we're all fighting for that mistrust. To many people, until the mass adoption, blockchain will not be about smart contracts, about Bitcoin, about NFTs, but it's going to be about community. And my call to action for you today is, again, to find out between you and that cell phone that's in your pocket right now, exists the very problem with mistrust. But through communities like blockchain is built, the solution also lies between you and that cell phone in your pocket right now. And that solution is to join us to fight mistrust, because all of us at some point have had our identities, and especially now our digital identities, compromised. The solution, again, is for you, like me with Santa, like my letter to Santa. It's often a very easy solution, but when we understand that by building that community and fighting that mistrust, we're actually fighting the polarization, we're fighting the misuse of our data. So again, this problem lies here, but the solution also lies here. Thank you.